start to compete, the expectation is every single time that we're in a tournament that today is going to be the day that I have my best possible game. And I want that for all of my players, but the harsh reality is that very rarely happens. And oftentimes we play and we compete a lot with our B games and our C games. Hey there, welcome to episode 3 of the Golf Never Sleeps podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Robillard. I'm a PGA of Canada golf coach, and on this podcast, I share my thoughts to help you improve your golf performance. If you enjoyed this video, I hope you go back and watch the others I've posted to date. On today's episode, I'm going to talk about the expectation of us having our best round every day. Let's call this our A game, and how to manage and work through having our B game and sometimes even our C game. I believe this is one of the biggest separators between good players and great players. So let's call a spade a spade. We want to play our best every single time we tee it up. Every single time we step on the golf course, we expect that today is going to be the day that I'm going to shoot my lowest round ever. And when we start to play in tournaments, when we start to compete, the expectation is every single time that we're in a tournament that today is going to be the day that I have my best possible game. And I want that for all of my players, but the harsh reality is that very rarely happens. And oftentimes we play and we compete a lot with our B games and our C games. And I think if we don't talk about it openly, only expecting or hoping to have our A game can set us up for failure. Now, let's break it down a little bit. I hope that leading into an event or before a round of golf, you are firing on all cylinders. But before we even get to the golf course, sometimes there might be some indicators that today might not be the day. We might not have slept very good. We might not be feeling that good. We maybe were rushed to get out of the house. We didn't get the breakfast we normally eat. Fight at home. Tough day at work the day before. There's so many different factors that can play a part. And again, I think it's just important for us to be aware in order to help us prepare. If you slept poorly the night before, if you woke up and your back was bothering you, there is a chance that your A game might not be there. Now, again, there's a chance it is there, but I think the disconnect and the thing that I want to keep bringing up today is that a lot of players only ever expect for their A game to be there, and the second it's not, they fold and they collapse. So once we realize that we don't have our A game, and I work with a lot of junior players and collegiate players. Some of them are new to competition. Some of them have been competing for a while. But oftentimes what I see, and even let's look at club level golfers playing their club championship. The second that it's not going perfect, whether they're nervous, they get off to a tough start, very rarely do we see those players rebound. Now, when we look at some of the best players in the world, they will get off to challenging starts and still find ways to bounce back. And I like to call that grind mode. What happens when you don't have your A game? We can't quit. We can't go home. We're already out there. We're already on the golf course. And the thought process that we need to go through is once we've realized that today might not be the day, our expectations and our mindset needs to change, but it can still be in a positive manner. When we have our A game, we might be aggressive. We're trying to make birdies. We're trying to make pars. We're maybe forcing shots that we normally wouldn't force because we're confident we have our A game. We're really in control of the golf ball. When our A game's not there, we quickly need to pivot to, I'm not in control of the way I feel. I'm not in control of my ball flight today. So how do we start to manage and mitigate the damages that we're going to have on the golf course? Our lines need to become a lot more conservative. Just trying to get the ball in play off the tee. Just hoping we get the ball around the green. And let's say even if we're not hitting the greens, trying to avoid missing it in the worst spot. Don't miss it in the left bunker if it's a left pin, as an example. Trying not to make putts, just hoping that we get it close to the hole in hopes that we two-putt and get out of there. Hey, I've just got a quick favor to ask, and I'll get you back to the episode. If you're enjoying these episodes, I need you to do me a favor. Can you please like, subscribe, and give me a positive review? Whether you're listening podcast, YouTube, wherever you're listening, your support in form of a subscription or review really helps the podcast grow and also means a lot to me. So if you're enjoying this, make sure you let me know by subscribing or leaving a review, and I'll keep making more great content. Now back to the episode. The reason why I say this is because when we're not always on and we still try to be aggressive, and we still try to be aggressive with our tee shots and where we're aiming and trying to hit it close to pins, that is where things can get really out of control. And that's where we start seeing players make huge numbers, doubles, triples, quads. When a player has their A game, we normally don't see massive numbers unless they make a really poor decision and a poor swing. But usually when they're on, it's birdies, it's pars, it's a couple bogeys, but it's usually very under control. When a player is off, that's when we can start to see very big numbers, but it doesn't have to be that way. Just because we don't have our A game, the thing that you as a player need to develop is a strategy around how do we manage getting around this golf course. Let's say, as an example, there's a hole at my home club that is a long, tight par 4. When I'm feeling confident and when I have my A game, I hit driver there almost every single time. With a good drive, I have a wedge in my hand, and I'm very happy. Usually it's, realistically, I'm going to make par there pretty often. There's a chance that I make birdie. There's obviously a chance I make bogey, but I usually tend to make par there a lot. The second that I don't have my A game, usually for me, my driver starts to go a little bit offline. The thing that I have the discipline to do that I hope maybe you get as a takeaway here, that narrow long par 4 has, it has out of bounds on the right. So now all of a sudden when I don't have my A game and my driver can start to go sideways, if I'm still thinking A game mindset on a B game day, I can hit that ball out of bounds and I'm hitting 3 off the tee. When I don't have my A game, it's not even a question. I don't hit driver there. I hit 3 iron. 3 iron is a club that I feel comfortable with 99% of the time. It's a club that I believe that I can get and play often. And it's something I have confidence with even when I'm not having my best day. Now, a lot of players might say, okay, you're going to take that club, but now instead of having that wedge in, if you hit the fairway, you're going to have like a long iron in. Because I don't have my A game, I want to try to limit big numbers. On a narrow hole hitting driver on a day that you're not feeling it, that's a high risk. And if you're hitting 3 off the tee, you're probably going to make a huge number. This is a small example, and I think another way that we can look at it is, let's look at a lot of players, holes that have bunkers short. Usually when we have our A game, our ball is getting the distance that we want it to go. It's getting to the middle of the green. It's getting to the back of the green. When we have our B game, we're usually not making that good a contact, and usually we end up short of the green in those bunkers a lot. The discipline we need to have when we don't have our A game is also adjusting our yardages. If you're not hitting it the best, your 150 club is not going to go 150 on a B day or a C day. It might go 135. It might go 140. All these different little decisions, hitting 3 iron off the tee on a hole that you would normally hit driver, taking more club and maybe putting your pride away and trying to get that ball onto the green or maybe even to the back of the green. That's what I like to call grind mode. And the challenge that I have for you, I believe that everyone listening right now, when you're on, you're on. I have no doubt that you can hit the shots that you want to hit. But the next time you have a day that you're not on, that's when I really want you to challenge yourself to put your head down and work. Can you grind out a number? Can you still find a way to post a score that you deem acceptable for the way that you feel? And for those of you that compete, that's the name of the game. When we're starting to play in events that have 2 rounds and then a cut, it's very rarely that you're going to have your A game both days in a row. And if we want to make the cut and if we want to contend, we're going to need to find ways to grind out decent scores when we don't have our A game. Now, I'm going to give you a tour example. Right now, there's a player, a well-known player, currently ranked top 20 in the world on the men's side, that has had maybe a little bit of an off year by their standards. This player shot 70, 78 in the Masters to miss the cut. Was very disappointed. Was vocal afterwards about how disappointed he was. In his following couple of events, tied for 25, tied for 25th, tied for 14th, but then tied for 65th. At the U.S. Open, this player shot 73, 81. And then after that, people had looked back and said, wow, in the 3 majors this year, this player hadn't performed to what they thought that they might have. And by their own admission, hadn't been having that good of a year so far. The interesting thing is that the following week, he had rounds of 70, 64, 62, 67, finished tied for 9th. He's back. The following week, he shoots 76 in the first round, 69 in the second round, and misses the cut. Now, this is not to point out that this is not to pick on the player, but it's to show that just in the rounds that I showed you, he had rounds as low as 62 and rounds as high as 81 in the same week, literally 7 days apart. In both scenarios, that player was working. They were grinding. Obviously, they've had some times this year where they've had their A game, but obviously they've had some times this year where they haven't had their A game, and the only thing that player could do is keep pushing through. And I think too often club level golfers and let's say new to competition players, they very quickly get the wheels turning really quickly, and they start losing control. So to kind of summarize what I've talked about in this episode today, you're not going to have your A game every single day. And to be quite honest, you rarely are going to have your A game. It's a lot of B game. Unfortunately, sometimes a lot of C game, but that's okay. The thing that I hope that you start to pay attention to is that when you recognize that you don't have your A game, is starting to make the adjustments to keep your scores manageable for that day. If you're normally shooting, let's say, in the high 70s to low 80s, I don't want an off day to be in the mid 90s or to be in the 90s. If you've identified that it's not your day, let's start to make some good decisions. Let's start to get safer off the tee. Let's start to get into grind mode. And how do we keep that score in the low to mid 80s? I believe at the end of the day, this separates the good from the great. And I think as coaches, and something that I try to spend more time talking to my players about, is we're going to live in the B game a lot, and that's totally okay. We're going to capture lightning in a bottle. We're going to have those A game days, and it's going to feel fantastic. But I feel that we have to be open and honest and transparent that there's going to be days that's not perfect, but we still have to put our nose down, keep our head down, and get back to work and grind it out. If you've enjoyed this episode, I hope you'll consider subscribing to be the first to know when new episodes are released. Thanks again for listening to Golf Never Sleeps podcast. Happy golfing.